This was quite a contentious exam, and I'll talk to you about why it was contentious amongst teachers once we get up to the cartoon, which was the problem. Okay, so what we want to have a look at is, we'll just read through the piece. So just like we would normally do, I'll ask you to have a pencil for the analysis so that you can note down anything that you think is something that you might come back to use as evidence. No highlighters. So remember, we use highlighters to identify the main arguments and where the arguments are, so we can visually see the shape of the text and how different elements might relate to each other. It helps us to plan our response for the most common structure of the essay that you might have. All right, so pencils at the ready. I'll use a red one so that it's nice and easy to see. You might want to just use a pencil, it's up to you. All right, so remember that in the SAC, if you're at a school that's doing an issue, you'll have lots of context. You'll know what the issue is. You'll know what the events have been, who the stakeholders are. You'll know all that stuff. In the exam, you won't know that. It'll be an unfamiliar topic. Increasingly, it's one that doesn't matter that much. It's not a big political or social issue. But you must read the background issue. Lots of schools are doing this style of assessment for the SAC as well to prepare you for the exam. But one of the most common things is that students don't think to read the background information, and they miss stuff. Often the background information will contain suggestions of the audience, particularly if there's more than one, say like in the speech that we just looked at, where there was the audience in the room and there was also the audience at home televised, or the example that I talked about last week where a teacher had written to parents, but also was, I guess, addressing the students as well. I think I mentioned that one last week. This background information sort of disproves my point, which is frustrating, but it's not super important, but it's still worthwhile to note a couple of things. We're talking about a very small town. Lawton is a town of only 3,000 people. We get the history of the town, so the fact that it used to be on a major highway, but there's been a diversion go through. And we get the idea that there's a range of ideas being presented within the community about how to address the drop in visitors, which is affecting the community's economy. We don't get other things, like we might get the idea of, there's going to be an address from the mayor and there's going to be a response from a citizen. We don't get the idea of the name of the paper that the mayor writes in. We don't get the idea of the organisation that the citizen represents and those sorts of things. But this is probably an odd background information to look at as an example. I think that generally you get more information than that, so certainly do take the point that it's important to look at the background information closely. Okay, moving into the piece. So here we get the source, or the publication, the local newspaper of Lawton publishes a weekly column written by the mayor. So every week the mayor writes in it. We get the mayor's name, Alexandra Wiley. So it's a lot of students this year wrote about the mayor as a man, but obviously Alexandra is not a male name. So lots of students just weren't reading very closely that year. So we've got the author of piece A, or piece 1, being mentioned here. All right. One of the main techniques that this person uses, this Alexandra Wiley uses, is lots of inclusive language. So I will point some of it out to you, but I won't certainly. I might highlight it all because it's probably their main technique. So we've got fellow residents, starts the mayor. Since the highway was diverted to bypass our town, actually I'm going to circle these because it's more easy to see, we have all enjoyed the resultant peace. How often have we thought how pleasant it is to be able to cross the street for a chat with a friend without taking our lives in our hands? How many of us have been glad to leave our windows open without fear of dust from the road invading our rooms? But there is a downside. We risk becoming a backwater on the way to being a ghost town. If this peace is all we have, of course, we no longer want huge trucks thundering down the main street. but we do want cars full of people who will eat at our beautiful bakery, socialise at our historic pub, buy our handicrafts and use books, even stay at our comfortable motel. We want tourists, and to be blunt, we need their money. So I haven't looked at any of the other techniques there, but do you see how regular and replete that paragraph is with inclusive language? So obviously the inclusive language is all about establishing rapport and connection. Think about it. The mayor is a representative of this group. They've voted for him or her, in this case a her, and her job is to represent them and to be one of them. Alexandra Wiley is also a resident of this community, so quite correctly using inclusive terminology, but in this instance the inclusive language used so commonly is to say we all have these feelings, we all have these shared experiences, we all have these desires or concerns. Let's look at a few of the other techniques. We've got lots of positive language. We have shifts in tone within this paragraph. So we've got positive language, peace, chat with friends, glad to leave our windows open. This is all good stuff, yeah? So this is all positive. But then we also have a switch, but there is a downside. We risk becoming a backwater, a ghost town. There'll be trucks thundering down the main street. Okay, so we have then some negative language being associated. So we've got the things that are good about the town, and then we've got the things that are negative about the town since this change that needs to be dealt with. Then we return to positive. Beautiful bakery. Notice the two B's, so that's alliterative to highlight the shift back to positive. We've got the historic pub, so historic has certain connotations as well that are positive, and the comfortable motel. So we've got back to positive. So just within this one piece, we've got tonal variance or tonal shift. And it has a particular point. It's to connotate positively the things that are good about the town, to connotate negatively the changes that have occurred and the problems that exist, and then to connotate positively the things that want to be emphasized or rejuvenated in what the mayor is about to propose. Okay, here we go. Council has been considering for some time how to attract travellers, and we think, I won't continue, actually, so I was going to continue to indicate all the inclusive language, but I'm not going to, because otherwise the annotation will get really messy. What I will say is the only one in this paragraph is this. So the we's at the top of the paragraph are actually about the local council. They're not about the whole town. Okay, but there's no inclusive language apart from the last line of this paragraph. So, sorry, council has been considering for some time how to attract travellers, and we think we have the answer. We have stopped thinking small, and we have started thinking on a grand scale. So these two things are compared, and it suggests forward thinking. In a sense, it's an appeal to progress. Our region is famous for the quality and freshness of its luscious produce, but we need a showcase for it. We grow the most crisp, most succulent fruit and vegetables around, and they should be our emblem. Imagine a spectacular piece of modern architecture, a landmark, a building, in which the visitors can enjoy our hospitality, and in front of which they can take selfies to show their friends. So we've got, positive words like succulent, freshness, luscious, spectacular. These are all positive. And I'm labeling all of these because what you'll see over the course of the article that the mayor has written is that there is a very clear pattern of what gets positive language, positive adjectives, and what gets negative language, negative connotation, negative adjectives. We've got the idea of selfies being taken. So we've got this modern idea, but also this continuing appeal to progress and appeal to modernity. Wiley goes on. We would have it created right here by local craftsmen and women, talking about this large installation or landmark that they're going to build. There could be no better place for it than our verdant Centennial Park. So verdant is another positive. Okay. Soaring is also positive. Soaring to the height of 20 metres or more, it would tower over the trees, another positive. And even over the spire of St. Martin's Church. Imagine the events that we would hold. So this is a hypothetical. And it's also, again, an appeal to the future. Okay, forward thinking. Imagine the events, imagine the benefit that we could hold and all the merchandise that would go with it. Cuddly toys, cards, gifts in the tourist centre. The list goes on. Now, so we get there, the list that is linked to part of that hypothetical and part of the appeal, all to promote our region. Now, there are some other inclusive terms in there, but that one's the one that's important in this instance. You want to own the region, you want to be part of it, then you've got to do something to improve it, is the implication. We don't yet have the final concept for what the structure will look like, but already, of course, we hear the naysayers. It isn't original. It has been done. A giant attraction. Can't we think of something else? Now, are these quotes? They're imagined quotes. Okay, and there's a connotation behind naysayers, which is negative. The way that this is presented undermines, in a sense, the naysayers have been very negatively characterised, and the language and the word naysayer at the front there certainly suggests that. Look at then the shift. But do you know what? All the towns with giant attractions are thriving, positive language. Visitors love them, positive language. Research shows that towns with giant attractions receive 20% more visitors. So we've got research and data, so experts and data being presented there. So we've got the positive here. So we see that shift between the naysayers being very negative to the positive outcomes. We've been told that there are people who make a point of seeing everyone, of photographing them all, even making a competition out of it. We deserve a share in that prosperity. Very strong connotation, prosperity, which is dollars, but also very positive. And then we have, again, the inclusive language really hitting, being hit really strongly at the end of the paragraph. Fellow residents, this is our chance. So we get the use of the inclusive language being hit very hard in this last paragraph again. We have to protect our lifestyle, our rural, wholesome Australian lifestyle in our own unpolluted town with its healthy food, sporting teams and annual show. We must preserve our caring community where neighbours know and look after one another. We want to welcome newcomers and offer them the chance to prosper among us. We want our farmers to buy produce, to have buyers for their produce. Our young people to have jobs. Our hospital and nursing home to be viable. We need to be on the tourist map, and your council, that is the council that's working for you, feels that it is the way to achieve it. So you can see that inclusive language happening really, really strongly there to appeal to their inclusion in the society, that this is their problem to solve, it's their solution to get behind. We have wholesome Australian lifestyle, which is an appeal to national pride or nationalism, values. We've got positive connotation between healthy food, sporting teams and the annual show. We've also got, you know, the values of the neighbours that know how to look after each other. So all of this is a values appeal. Okay, so it's a national values or a national pride thing. And if Alexandra finishes up by saying, please support this exciting idea, so positive language there, making Lawson a truly great positive association town. All right, so that's her article in the local paper. What's the contention? So remember, we're doing a CAP reading, okay? CAP, contention, arguments, and purpose. So contention, argument, purpose, cap. So the contention, there's no headline that gives us that. So the contention might be build a giant thing. The arguments, well, let's take our highlighter to do the arguments. So I'm going to do my first argument in green, and really easily it's here. Okay, so this first argument is we have a problem. So the problem that we're dealing with is argument number 1. Argument number 2 comes nice and neatly here, down to about there. And this is the solution. Okay. Argument number 3 is a little bit more split up. So argument number 3 comes here, and then there's a bit of a break, and then it goes down to the end of the page, and essentially it's the benefits. So it's a really simple set of argument structures. We've got a problem, a solution, and the benefits of that solution. Really logical. In the middle, we have one more argument being raised that is going to be important for our next step, and that's here. And this is the counter argument, and they're presenting the rebuttal against that. Okay. All right, so those are the arguments. So we've got the contention, the arguments, we've got 4 of those, and then the purpose. Well, what's the purpose? Think about what the mayor is, someone that makes things change, but they need support. So it's to seek support for a community project. Because what would happen if in your backyard someone wanted to build a giant monument? You would oppose it, you might do a petition, and the mayor is trying to prevent that sort of opposition. All right, over to the page next door. And this gives us some of the background to this next piece. In the next edition, so this is important to note for sequence. Okay, it's not in the same article, it's not in the same paper, it's in the following week's paper, but it is being published in that same paper, and it's a letter, so it's telling us, often you'll get that sort of material in the background information, but this is in the actual exam itself, in the exam material, and this article is pretty straightforward. I'm going to pick the same color as I had before. Here, oops, sorry. So here, what it does is it actually does pick up the problem there and there, which is the counter argument. So you can see I've used the same color as I did on the previous page. So what did the naysayers say? It isn't original, it's been done, it's a giant attraction, can't we think of something else? Which is exactly what Ian Warwick says. Ian Warwick also, however, does present, what's the colour I haven't used? I might just use this purple here. Ian Warwick does actually suggest that there is an alternative solution. Not easy to write with a highlighter, but that's okay. So he does suggest that there's an alternative solution that could be applied, and so you can see that his argument, in a sense, or his piece is a response. It's going, yep, we do have these issues that we want to raise, but we're not just naysayers. We're also pointing out a different solution, perhaps a better solution. Let's have a look at what his article actually says now that I've given you that framework. He says, of course we share the Councillor Wiley's concern. Of course we want our town to survive. So these two things are about showing that he is reasonable, doesn't deny the problem. But destroying its beauty is not a way to make it great. The country is paved with plenty of giant attractions, all large, ugly installations. Ugly, destroying, paved, okay, giant, all negative language. Yep. Can't we be different? Can't we have cultural focus? So this is repetition and also inclusive. Yep. Surely an art gallery or an annual music festival, a literary week, would be preferable to this monstrosity, more negative language. So notice that the alternate solution is being introduced, but the idea of a giant watermelon is being negatively associated with negative language. The world already has too many selfie opportunities. It's put in, these are called scare quotes. And what they do is they make you read it in almost a sarcastic, like, why are selfie opportunities a good thing sort of tone. Surely, we get that word again, surely visitors who like this sort of thing are not the type we want. Before we know it, this showcase will be overrun by loud children, defaced by vandals, and our air will be polluted by too many cars. So again, lots of negatives, right? Lots of negative association language. Let us consider what gives value to our lives. It's not prosperity at any price. It's not sporting teams and the noisy show. It is quality of ideas. It is the pursuit of beauty. Our young people would be better employed as catalogue designers, gallery guides, or storytellers. We say to council, please think again. So this is important because it's polite. He challenges the notion of the value appeal in the previous page. And these surelys are also really important because he's implying that it's obvious, the limitation of the mayor's suggestion. This grants him authority and respect. Okay, so quite a few techniques going on there. Now, here's why this was a contentious exam. Lots of debate about whether it was a good paper or not. The cartoon made the front page of the Herald Sun the next day. And I'll share an anecdote with you to capture the debate. There was no agreement on whether or not it was positive for the suggested fix or negative. And in my office, I have a colleague who I've shared an office with for a decade, and we came almost to blows, so almost in fisticuffs over this cartoon. We didn't really, but it was quite a heated debate. I saw the cartoon as very positive, so positively supporting the mayor's solution, and she saw the cartoon as very negative, so pointing out that it was horrible, a horrible idea. Now, in the end, the examination board suggested that it could be read in either way, and I think that that's quite interesting. But perhaps just have a look at what you think in terms of how we would annotate this. So remembering, just using that same thing of the elements. So in the foreground, we've got cars. Okay, so that's one element. We've obviously got, the environment of the town, both there and here. The big thing is the suggestion of the creation. So those are really the main elements to me. So in the car, we've got people coming in who are keen. They're pointing in that direction. We've got people diverting. So we've certainly got the car that's come off that might not have otherwise done that because it would have gone past. So we've got the idea that this is working. But we've also got all of these people down here visiting the monument. And all of these people, so this might be seen, these are happy, smiling faces, keen to go. That might be seen as a positive. This car coming off the freeway might be seen as a positive. All the cars parked might be seen as a positive because they all associate positively with the economic survival of the town. But all of these people that we've underlined here, although these little stick figures, are quite faceless. And this might attach to the idea that these are vandals, that they're, you know, what was the language? The type that we want, you know, loud children. And they're not that particular type. That could be associated with their facelessness, the fact that they're just black stick figures. So that could be a negative thing. We've got the size of this. It's huge. Now, the mayor promised that as a positive, but other people might see that as a negative. For instance, if you compare the relationship between the church or the town and the watermelon, this seems to dwarf those things. And I also heard the word used regularly, it overshadows them. You know, Lawton is no longer about the town itself, the town or the church or nature. It's about this huge monstrosity. But other people said, look, there's still plenty of nature, okay, and there's still a shining sun, so these are positive things. So you can see, depending on how you read the cartoon, depending on how you look at it, it has the potential to be read in either way. And students that said all the positive things did really, really well, and students that said all the negative things did really, really well. Some students said that it could be read in either way, and they did well as well. I think the idea is to talk about the potential and use tentative language, not to say the cartoon's definitely in support or definitely opposed, because we can't know that. What we can do is make sure that we're analysing it and going, look, it could be implying this, it could be implying that. Some people will see the image of the giant watermelon as such a negative thing. Lots of people talked about all the shadow. So you see all these shadow lines here, and the fact that it's shadowing over the cars as well. Lots of people talked about that as implying the fact that it's overshadowing the town. But then lots of people suggested that there's still plenty of sun on the nature over here, which shows that it's just a large thing as the mayor promised. So, you know, the idea that it could be either is fine. And hopefully that gives you some potential. To use our highlighter colours, if we went to the rebuttal, obviously we've got just the, oops, you know, potentially, oh, it's the wrong colour, sorry. Yep. Potentially we've got the, oops, can't use this computer. Potentially we've got this supporting the counter argument, the fact that it's horrible, it's garish. We might have these supporting that counter argument as well. But certainly in terms of Wiley's argument, we could also see the cartoon. We could see this is also potentially being the solution, and then I think I used orange maybe. Yep, orange. We could see, you know, this one here and all the cars parked here as the solution, benefits. So, you know, the car that's coming off the freeway as being a benefit. So there's lots of ways that we could see that cartoon. Okay, so what I want you to think about with that is that essentially, if I made some notes here, what we did is we had a couple of different arguments. Sorry. This is sort of what I would do. Oops. Oops. Oh, what did I do that for? That one there. This is what I would do in the exam myself, is just make some notes about what I can see in terms of the different points being made in in the piece, just down the bottom, on the bottom of the sheet. I had this one as well. What was the first one that I used? Green. Oop. Yeah, that'll do. Okay. So in a sense, I had argument number 1 was the problem. Argument number 2, the solution. Argument number 3, the benefit. Oh. Argument number 4, the counter. And argument number 5, the alternative. Now, why I've separated them like that is that we essentially have this is going in favour and these going opposed to the contention of the mayor of the big watermelon is a good idea. All right.